Got some interesting stuff going on in rock and roll. We love to talk about rock and roll a little bit.
Love it.
There was an interesting article through TonyCurryRadio.net, the new website. If you go to KCast Radio, it will redirect you to TonyCurryRadio.net about Eddie Van Halen and Gene Simmons. And these rock and rollers now who are in their 60s and 70s, they remember things differently. They remember these stories differently. So the story goes down that Van Halen at the time was unsigned before they went with Warner Brothers. And they were invited to play a show for Kiss, specifically in this room. I forget what the name of the room was out in L.A.
Play it for them? Or
yeah, I mean, they knew Kiss was already set up. Kiss was already huge. And Van Halen was up and coming. They had written some songs for their first album, including "Running for the Devil" and "Call Me a Doctor," and so they performed these songs for Kiss because they knew they were in the room and they specifically played.
Wow.
And Gene Simmons, who had his own label going on, he's pure businessman. Yeah, his forethought on how things work is amazing. And he basically they own everything Kiss has ever. I mean, if you buy a Kiss, coffin or a Kiss lunchbox, the money's going back to Kiss. And so he sees Eddie Van Halen playing Running with the Devil on stage. He's like, okay, this cat is special. This guy's got something on. So he wants to sign Eddie Van Halen and Van Halen to his record label. And Gene goes back to Paul and the rest of the guys in the band, Ace Frehley guys, and says, listen to this. And they don't get it. They're like, I don't get it. He's like, you don't get it? What are you talking about?
I can see Gene.
He's like, this band is going to be huge. And they're like, I don't see it. And so basically, as a group, they decided that they weren't going to allow Gene to sign Van Halen to his record label or to Kiss's record label because they had their own thing going on. They're like, listen,
that's interesting.
You're running off a little bit here, and we got our own thing here, and we're pretty big and famous, and we really want Kiss, and we don't want you getting into this management type of thing.
Oh, I see. With a distraction, not a.
They're saying they put him on the leash. Now I don't know if you could ever put Gene Simmons on a leash.
Yeah.
So Gene comes out. The first album that Van Halen came with, they signed with Warner Brothers a year later, sold over 10 million copies. It's done pretty well.
Yeah.
It is a staple in rock and roll history. And so let's fast forward to 1982, where after they had released that first album, Eddie Van Halen, this is where Gene and Paul have two different stories. Gene tells it that Eddie called him up one night and said, I got to get away from this David Lee Roth guy. He's driving me crazy. I can't do it anymore.
That's understandable.
This is 1982.
Yeah.
He would make it almost another decade with the band, right? And they would put out another 4 or 5 records. And he asked Gene if he could join Kiss. This is what Gene's story is. And Gene's like, no.
We don't have any costumes left.
Well, we don't. Yeah. He's like, no. And then he's like, why? And he's like, you're too big to join Kiss.
Interesting.
It's kind of like Kurre and Klapow with Talk 99.5.
Yep.
We wanted to be part of the Talk 99.5 thing. And Talk 99.5 said, you're too big for us. And I'm like, we want to work. We do a great show on this news talk format. And they're like, they didn't say we were too big, but we knew we were too big. And they were kind of like, well, you guys will take too much off the other members of this family. And so we're just going to grow on our own. And so like, okay, so we started the Kurre and Klapow show on KCast Radio on the Tony Curry Radio, and we've done pretty well. We haven't sold 10 million copies yet, but
we're on our way.
But we're getting there. We're the Van Halen as opposed to... And so Eddie's like blown away because he knows he's a great guitar player.
Yeah.
And he can't believe that he's being shunned by the greatest rock and roll band at the time, being Kiss. And so he's like, no, you stick with Van Halen, fight through it. It's going to be tough.
Gene sounds like a parent.
I know David Lee Roth's a pain in the ass.
You see what it sounds like?
Yeah. But you're going to be fine, and trust me on this. You guys are big enough. You're going to be fine. This is in 1982. Paul Stanley remembers it as like Gene's full of crap. Eddie was never even close to being in the band Kiss. And maybe that's Paul Stanley protecting his brand in the band itself. But it's really interesting to see these rockers because that's a story I'd never heard of. I'd never heard that.
Okay, so let's pause.
Yeah.
Give everyone a time to reflect. Mm-hmm. can you imagine, as you're talking through this whole thing, what's going through my head completely is trying to imagine Eddie Van Halen in a Kiss outfit. Like, so that, I mean, like, okay, like, just stop.
Could you imagine David Lee Roth putting makeup on every night?
Well, no, I could
what
see. No, but
he would look like a clown.
But but hang on. Look at their two personalities. I could see David Lee Roth being in Kiss. Could you see Eddie Van Halen with the platform shoes? He's like, what character would he be? What would he look like?
I don't know, man.
He's
got the hair. He had the hair.
Yeah, David didn't.
He would have. Well, David had the hair too.
Yeah, at the time,
he would have fit in pretty well there.
You know what? But Eddie's like, I'm gonna just say this: Kiss, obviously, Kiss was just phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to say Kiss wasn't cool like Eddie Van Halen.
Yeah,
Eddie Van Halen had this. I mean, it's almost like you can't even put the two together. Like, Kiss was a show. Kiss was it was more than the music.
Well, you can make an argument.
We only found out, what is it, Paul Stanley now that he can sing?
Yeah, well, you can make an argument now that he was already in Kiss.
Who?
Eddie was. He had David Lee Roth. They were just doing it with no makeup.
Yeah.
Because David Lee Roth was into the kicking and the blood, not the blood stuff, but I mean just being the showman like Kiss was.
That's true.
And so he kind of had a little piece of Kiss already in the band, and maybe Gene saw it. Paul didn't remember it that way. He's like, no, that never happened. He never came close. And maybe he didn't come close, but the fact that and he didn't refute the fact that Eddie actually called him and said, listen, I want to be in the band. You know, this is one of those older age kind of things where, you know, life is made up of choices. You know, I forget what you know where I'm going here. Yeah, I don't know if the movie's called Sliders, where there's two movies going on at the same time, and everything's 5 seconds apart. Like, if I made this choice today, if I didn't eat that extra piece of chocolate cake, or I took the right turn instead of the left turn, or I went out with her instead of her, or I didn't marry her, or I decide not to have a kid till 3 years later. It's a series of choices, and then it compounds, and that choice creates a million other choices for other people in and around you and people that you interact with. I mean, it'll make your head explode when you think about it.
Yep.
And there's a lot of times where, you know, I think about, you know, what if I had taken that ESPN job?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and what if this was different, or what if I hadn't married this person, or what if we hadn't had this child, or what if, you know, I'd taken this job, or again, what if I decided to and a lot of times we navigate and we come up with our own thoughts. Wow, this is why this happened. If I hadn't done this, this would happen, this would happen, and this would happen. Now, we don't know if you hadn't done that, if it would have been 3 times better than the situation we're in, or we don't know if that miraculous moment in your life would have made your life just go down the sewer and changed everything you got. And so it's almost too much to think about, but it is something interesting when you're making, because there are small choices. Like, should I have that next piece of chocolate cake because I'm going to have a bellyache, and that bellyache could turn into this, and it could show me I've got appendicitis, blah, blah, or buying a home, or getting married, or doing whatever. It's interesting because my niece-in-law, my ex-niece-in-law, is getting married this weekend. And my marriage was just dissolved several months ago, and so my kids are going, this is weird that we're going to see these two people celebrate their life, and they love each other, yet we just went through what happens when it doesn't work. And I'm like, you're seeing the whole gamut, man.
That's right.
And you trust that they're making the right decisions, that they love each other, they're doing it for the right reasons, and so it's very, very interesting. And so that's what started making me think, okay, what if this hadn't happened? But if Van Halen did get in Kiss, we would have never had Van Halen.
What would they have been? I don't understand. I guess I don't understand.
He just would have been part of Kiss.
Oh, if Eddie Van Halen would have, yeah. They would have had better guitar playing.
We would have been missing out on, and we wouldn't know the difference because there's still 8 trillion great classic rock bands out there, but we would have gone through our whole life without the band Van Halen.
So, I mean,
which is kind of hard to fathom.
It's a fun mental exercise, right? To do that. I think it's fun. What if I would have?
Yeah.
Or what if I wouldn't have? But I do think it's what you just said. It becomes so mind-boggling that we have to tell ourselves stories. We do. Because that is the only way, it's the only way that we cannot dwell on the what ifs.
Yeah.
And the problem is We don't know the what ifs. And listen, particularly when bad things happen.
Yeah.
I don't even mean tragic. Job doesn't work out. Relationship doesn't work out. I mean, that's tragic, but not like we're talking about with Robbie. We do this. We go both ways. We go, if I would have only done this and this and this, then the relationship would have been okay, or then I would have gotten the job.
Yeah.
But then we simultaneously, because that makes us feel bad, like, crap, that sucks.
Yeah.
Then we go the other way. Well, there was no way I could have done this and this. And because of them and where that happened, then this is how I got to here. And then we go, okay. I mean, what we have a harder time dealing with is shit just happens.
Yeah.
And I want to say this, not everything happens for a reason, down to these decision points. Like we were talking about with Nicki Minaj. I mean, yes, we all make decisions, but there's not always this like greater driver behind it. And to be honest with you, this is why I think this is why we get ourselves in trouble sometimes.
There's no doubt.
We don't think. We're just like, we go and make a decision.
If we always try to figure out why things are happening the way they are,
right.
it will drive you crazy. You just got to put your best foot forward. You got to work hard. You got to have a good heart and do the right things and hope good things happen. And normally they will, because you're opening yourself up to resources and people want to be around you, and they'll do things for you and vice versa. And you hope it works out. No, you're spot on. And it's always easy in hindsight.
Yeah, of course. Well, it is.
But if you're actually trying to narrate your life while you're doing it, it will blow up in your face.
No, but there is a point, if we're going to get ultra philosophical and towards the end of our show. You've talked about this. You can't direct everything in your life. You can't. But you do need to. You don't want to go to the opposite extreme and go, there's nothing I can control. There's nothing I can do. I mean, to me, this is intentionality, right? This is the idea of, if you don't think, you can screw your life up, right? You can make decisions that will have huge negative implications if you're not thinking. I mean, go all the way down to the relationship thing. You call your wife a terrible thing. You cheat on someone, right? So there's definitely things that you can control. And to me, this is the idea of being intentional. We don't have the mental ability to be intentional in everything we do. Some people are better at it than others. But I think if you try to hold that as before I make decisions, particularly bigger ones, I'm going to think for a minute. You're great at this. This is not good for radio. You do this. Yeah. You do this thing with your hands. Yeah. Just check it back. Yeah. Just check it back, right?
Don't hit, don't quit.
Yeah, right. Again, we talked about yesterday with Britney Spears. Britney. Stop. Hang on a minute. Don't drop your Instagram account. Yeah. Right? Or maybe you should. Don't get engaged. Nikki. You don't need to go on telling her that your cousin in Trinidad's got swollen testicles and he got it from there. Let's think about that. You could be, what I told you, you would be better at that. You could be hired. You could work for all these famous people, right, who have got bazillions of dollars, who are about to make stupid decisions, and you would be the guy. Hang on. Let's just think about that. Because that's what you need. Yeah. That's what you need. And you're very good at that. And I'll tell you, if everybody checked it back, and it's the hardest part of checking it back is when you're in. Yeah. When you're all in. And you're in. And it's called the emotional reasoning fallacy. I feel this way, and that therefore this is happening. And it's the hardest thing in the world to go, no, this is happening, and you feel this way, but you feel this way. Your feelings are not driving this. In fact, your feelings are screwing it up. So stop using your feelings to navigate this. I see more people get in trouble because of that.